Sherman couldn't make it, so
So
Bill
I'm
and Jerry,
substituting.
why don't you come down and join us? Come on, get a chair and come on down.
I'm here to learn about the memories
No, we want to hear all your memories.
Jerry, we have to tell about the teacher we made cry. That's a true story. You know, in Gosport they had those water heaters along the walls or whatever they were.
Radiators.
Okay, and if everybody in the class started doing like this with their feet, the whole floor would shake. Like the whole building would shake. So we had Eleanor Moore for music, and we started doing that in her class. And all of a sudden it got shaking. She got so mad, yelled at us, and then ran out the door and slammed the door. Well, this was when the school was really old, and the plaster above the door all fell. I mean, it just looks like and we got to laughing so hard, all this, and she was so mad. She started crying, and she went. Of course, Mr. Moore was the principal then, and so we got in trouble. That whole class did that time. I don't know what he made us do, but
Well,
it
one
was
of the
something
rooms
else.
upstairs we used to
It was upstairs
dance.
room.
What did
And
you
we
tell
would
them?
dance at lunch.
When Jerry and
Jerry did. The girls were even doing it.
Eleanor?
Yeah,
Eleanor Moore
In
cried.
the little gray room?
we made her cry. Yeah.
Yeah, and the bricks fell out of the door over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, now before you get started.
You know we're all gonna pay for that.
Yeah. I know.
So our illustrious panel from the 60s and the 70s, who are now getting older and older as we go, is Mike King, Joellen Smith, Rust, Kim King Smith, Craig Brighton, and Jerry Thomas. So welcome.
We're all related.
Sherman Smith was supposed to be here, but he had something come up, and he wrote me a note and wanted me to read it. So if you'll bear with me for a second. It says, Alyssa, I'm sorry I won't be able to be there tomorrow. Time, distance, and responsibilities here just make it difficult. I was thinking about some things I wanted you to share. Moving back to Gosport when I was in 3rd grade in the mid-1960s left many memories. 3 that stand out even today include number 1, going into Briggs Station and buying a bottle of pop from the cooler where the bottles were suspended in cold water. I've never seen such a cooler or machine since then. Number 2, Bob Moore's store with the candy in the display case and Edith Hancock weighing it out as you purchased. Number 3, seeming like everyone knew me, but I didn't know too many of them. Moving back to the town where my parents were born and raised was more than I realized at the time, but I appreciated very much over time. Bob Moore always called me Ned every time he saw me. I think he was not the only one that called me Ned as well. Many people and things come to mind from this period of time. My grandmother Noy was a special lady. Mr. Overton asked if I ever went bear hunting with a toothpick. When I wanted to try out for the basketball team, I think I said yes. 3rd grade in Miss Leona's class, she taught my dad in elementary as well. The corner drugstore where you could get a real cherry Coke. Playing football at the Masonic Yard with the older guys who were really tough to tackle. The depot and other iconic structures around the town that were lost, torn down, or burnt. Going to town to buy Dad a carton of cigarettes. I don't think any 8 or 10-year-old kid could do that today. The water fountain in the town park that constantly ran. It was always cold and it tasted great. My beagle dog somehow drank from it a few times as well. The many characters we had in town. Some drank a lot and some didn't, but all were great to have around. The Gosport Indians beating the Spencer Cops in 1966. Having an evening world paper route. Mowing yards and later putting up hay with Donnie Hall. Trapping muskrats in Indian Creek and the White River. The list and the names could be endless. Each person, place, thing had such an impact on a young kid. It's amazing yet scary how you can remember things from 50 plus years ago when you reach a certain age. Gosport was and remains a special place to me. I moved away and not moved back, but I'm always moved by the memories that come back to me. I hope you can read this for everyone tonight. Thank you for asking me to participate. I know that others will do fine in my absence. So that was
what I remember us pestering her crying, but what I remember about her crying, and it really scared me, is the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. we all went in the school up to the study hall. They gathered us all up there, and I think this is in 1964, so what were we, 8 years old maybe? Mrs. Moore took us up, well, 63, sorry, he's always right. He's always right. But we went up there, and she was up there weeping with other people. And she wasn't upset with kids at that time. That was the only time that I ever saw her weeping, that she wasn't upset with kids. And it was a time I'll never forget.
I got one on Sherman.
Okay.
So Sherman, I know Keith trapped down at Indian Creek down here too. My brother, I did it was Sherman and Andy Smith, and Sherman had caught a coon in a trap, live, a foot trap, and it had crawled clear back up in the den, and it was cold. I mean, probably zero. Well, anyway, I said, "Sure, what are you going to do?" He goes, "I'm going home to get my .22 rifle." And I said, "Well, then what are you going to do?" I said, "That coon's clear up in that den." He says, "Well, I'm going to pull it out by the tail and shoot it in the head." And that's what he did. In the process, he went in Indian Creek, and it was cold. And by the time he got home, his pants and everything was frozen solid. He said, "I can hardly move." So there's a saying a friend of mine taught me a long time ago. This great theology lesson. He says, "It's not my fault we're alive." Because all the things that we did as kids,
We could
it's a
tell all kinds
wonder.
of stories on Sherman, and he's not even here. We'll have to
Right.
I'm going to ask you guys, we've been talking about favorites and things like that, so I'm going to ask you, who was your favorite teacher growing up in Gosport, and what kind of influence did they have over you? Michael, we'll start with you and work our way down.
Just like John Brown, Eleanor Moore. Or no, Edna Montgomery. Yeah, math teacher was incredible. You got to think, back then she taught from 7th grade all the way up to high school, 12th grade. We went down to Owen Valley when I was a freshman, was first year at Owen Valley actually. And we were so prepared in math because of her. I mean, we were heads and shoulders above. I did really, really well on my SAT in math. I mean, super well. Our English, not so well. But math, we were so well prepared, and I think you'll agree with that too. Mrs. Montgomery, she was something else. She never did help my sister much. I couldn't understand that. But the rest of us, she did a pretty good job with.
It's kind of funny. I ended up being an English major and getting an undergraduate to graduate degree in it. But when I took the SATs, I scored higher in math than I did in English. So there you go. And when the Army came and gave us testing down at
PSAT.
Yeah, when the Army came and they did some testing down at the library at high school, they thought that I was strong in math and that I should be clerical or an accountant for the Army. And I was like, "Are you kidding?"
We all wish you'd gone in the Army.
About me.
I know. Joellen.
I would say Edna Montgomery. I love math. My sister loved math. But what I remember most about math with Edna Montgomery, I was in her algebra class, and she would give us our test, and I'd fill it out. And I was an A student. And so I get this test back, and I have an F. And I'm looking at the problems, and I'm looking at the answers, and I know I have every single problem right. So I take it up to her, and she goes, "Joellen, you copied every problem wrong from the bulletin board up front." And that's when I learned I needed glasses. And so my parents took me to the eye doctor, and I got my glasses, and I remember coming out of the office with them on. And my mom and I used to do jigsaw puzzles all the time. And I said, "Mom, everything looks like a jigsaw puzzle. They're outlined. There's outlines everywhere." And that's because of that.
Oh, that was great.
I wish I had a good reason for all my F's.
We'll get to you in a minute, Jerry. Yeah.
And what I remember about Eleanor Moore was her handkerchief on her shoulder. And all class, she'd be adjusting her handkerchief.
And knee
Is
socks.
that what that was?
You have to wipe tears away.
I loved Mrs. Whitaker because she participated in the first Gone show for me, and she was always so jolly and happy, and she would let us have parties. I really think that she knew that I had a twist on being an event planner, and it was things that she liked to do too, and us getting to have the events, and she could handle the drama. One time, about everybody in the class, there was a sink in the back, starting with Roger, started vomiting, got sick, and then that started a whole domino effect, everybody gagging, and back there, and she could handle it. And she could handle that drama, but we had a really, really good time with her, and I loved doing her hair. But I also love doing division because she taught us up there on the board what you're going to borrow from your neighbor, and how to borrow in math, and here I'm talking about math again, and it was great. I really enjoyed her.
Craig, what about you? What about your favorite
what was
teacher?
was this high school? Was this
It could be
elementary school?
anybody.
Okay, well there are many that come to mind.
Give us your favorite,
My-
or give us
Well,
one.
any guy up here would have to say Mrs. Justice.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it.
You'll have to explain. Everybody's going one, so explain, Mrs. Justice.
She got to sit on this
But
table
that's not what I was
first.
going to tell.
Yeah, okay.
Because I didn't want to. But no, I would have to say Larry Hunter. And U.S. history. I loved the way he taught the class. And I wasn't so much on U.S. history, but I passed with flying colors because of the way he set up his classroom and the kind of exams that he gave. Mostly it was all true and false. So he did it orally, true and false. And so on this side of the class, I sat, and on the other side of the class, the students faced each other this way. So he had the floor up and down through the middle to walk and everything else. He'd stand up there and give his true and false questions. Well, the valedictorian sat right across from me, and I know who it was, and how she wrote. If she wrote true, she'd come back and cross the T. If she wrote false, done. So
You're talking about my sister.
I learned ingenuity at the same time I learned U.S. history.
Trudy, Jerry, what about you? What's your favorite teacher?
You know, at the time, I didn't classify her as my favorite, but Mrs. Montgomery, I was not a great math student, and I had to approach it from different angles. Anyway, she challenged me, motivated me, gave me different ways to look at things. Went to college, had no idea, but always did well in math, but wasn't interested in it. And then went out into the real world and ended up teaching math for 25 of my 35 years.
She was probably so proud.
So, and I connected with the C students and could, help them find different ways of, because the good math students see math totally different than the rest of the world. And so I was able to connect with the rest of the world more than those, and, we had our Oxford students and stuff like that that went through our school, but you didn't have to help them. They carried me along.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question to the guys, because you all played sports. You all played football together at Owen Valley, but back to the Gosport. So, what was it like when the Gosport school, when we transferred everything to Owen Valley, away from Gosport Indians? What was it like for you as an athlete going from Gosport to that? We'll start with Jerry and we'll work our way
We
back.
made it as difficult as possible for us to meld. I mean, we would go to games wearing purple and gold socks instead of wearing red, white, and blue.
Interchange shoes.
Yeah.
Purple, I'd have gold with swap.
Yeah. It just happened that most of those points scored at Owen Valley, with the exception of Don, was scored by somebody from Gosport. So that came up a lot. But really, thinking back, after been in coaching, getting a group to meld from 3 different schools and finding success as quickly as we did. I mean, we didn't set the earth on fire, but we had winning programs within the first year 1, year 2, year 3. We were winning right at 500. So it was a great transition. I thought it was a great transition, and I credit a lot of that to the men who put the program together. Mike's dad and his uncle, Vern Petrie. Although, I mean, from 4th grade on, 5th grade on, we were working as a unit with Keith and Spencer and Petrie. It just meshed very well.
Yeah, Joe.
I have a story about transition about Jimmy Brighton and John Moore.
Okay.
My class was the junior class who was going to go down as a senior to Owen Valley. So during our junior year, Jimmy Brighton and John Moore, every day after school, Monday through Friday, drove us down to participate in extracurricular activities with the Spencer Patricksburg kids. And so they helped us introduce to the other students. My class was a class of 12 from 1st grade to then, and we went to a class of 166. So they did that for us, and I'll never forget that.
That's a great.
Yeah, we were lucky because of sports that we were Gosport, in Gosport school at one year, but we were Owen Valley. So they had the Gosport campus, the Spencer campus, and the Patricksburg, but the sports was Owen Valley. So we had to drive down to Spencer for practice, and we were lucky because we already had Spencer friends before we actually went to school there because we played sports with them. We played junior high football together, and I think we played spring football, didn't we? And
We
fall
started with the
football.
boys clubs in Bloomington, and you were 5th grade, I was 6th grade.
And then we played everything with them, and so we had friends before we went to school, which really helped integrate us.
We played with IU players. They grew up to be IU players.
Yeah. I've got a story to tell about John Moore, too. He was on his last legs at Owen Valley there, kind of getting ready to retire, but he was our government teacher. Okay. And so one time in government, he got up there and made the statement that you can only send a letter through the U.S. Post office. You can't send it through any other way. And I raised my hand. I said, Mr. Moore, I think can't you do that with UPS or something? Because I worked at my dad's plant. And he said, no, you cannot. It's just got to be through the U.S. Post Office. So this is around Christmas time. So I went home on Christmas and I said, Dad, can I send a Christmas card from UPS? He goes, well, yeah, I think so. So I sent a Christmas card to Mr. Moore. And just wanted to prove a point, Mr. Moore.
That went over good.
So when I got back to school the first day, he said, Mike King, come up to the front. And I knew what he wanted. And I was just grinning from ear to ear. He told the class, said, I got to apologize to Mr. King here. He was right. You can send a Christmas card through UPS because look what I got. He goes out and showed everybody.
My dad paid him to say that.
He probably did. But another thing, all of us kids here, we all had parents that went to Gosport. All 5 of us had a parent, one parent or 2 parents or whatever that went to Gosport. So that was kind of cool too that all of us are here.
My dad was postmaster, that's why I say that.
Yeah. Her dad is in the original song here, actually. Kim is, yeah.
Kim and Joellen, let me ask you about your friends. We talked about going to Owen Valley and things like that, but who would you consider your best friend in grade school and why?
Oh, well, I had several best friends, but if I had to say from grade school, it would be Sally Tharp. Sally and I walked to school together every day. I would walk from my house on the end of 4th Street when the bus was picking up the Burns girls right at the same corner. And I would have to walk all the way to the other side of town. And I'd go over pick up Sally, and then we'd go to school. And then when she got her car, then she would drive me down to Speedway, and we buzzed the drive-ins and look for the guys and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so Sally was probably for grade school.
Kim?
Well, in Miss Veda's class, and Miss Veda was also my grandpa Gerald Marley's 2nd grade teacher as well as mine, and wanted us to have perfect cursive handwriting that I'll try to use back here when I do my signature. I had her in class, and this little girl came in our class, and she was from Mooresville, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's far, far away. And she had the strangest name, and she kept on calling her Viola. And I'm like, I've never heard that name before, Viola. Well, her name was Debbie. And Debbie Hall was, I would consider, my best friend growing up in Gosport. We were in 4-H together. I think we were in Brownies together. We were always doing something together, and I knew who Viola was, and then my mom and dad told me who Viola was and told me stories about Viola and them growing up. She was the same age as Uncle John, and she's the senior queen of Gosport this year, which I'm so happy about. But I would say that it was Debbie. And Debbie, I have to tell everybody, was a far better student for Mrs. Montgomery than me.
She had to take off, but that's a good thing.
She was a great.
That's good. That's good. Now the boys didn't have best friends like the girls did, so the boys kind of ran in packs in Gosport. So I'm going to ask you guys, because I know you did a lot of things together and things. What was a prank that you pulled in Gosport? Sometime. And Craig, I want to start with you.
Oh boy, you had well, wasn't so much a prank as it was just some guys getting together and having some mischief. We had a Foxfire book at home, and in a Foxfire book it tells you all kinds of things to do. Bill, I think, was there. He probably remembers this. I can tell. Sherman and somebody else, I can't remember who it was, but this was when the feed store was here, and we got this recipe out of the Foxfire book for moonshine. And so who was it had the property out north of town?
Jack Children.
Who was it?
Jack Childers.
Jack Childers. Yep. And a little cabin or something by the lake there.
Chicken coop.
And so one of us went to the hardware store and got a gas can and some copper tubing. And another one of us went and got corn mash out of the feed store and the grocery store and got some yeast. And started cooking this stuff on this potbelly stove in that. We filled a liter bottle. I mean, it was white lightning. And but we caught the cabin on fire. We were all down at the lake horsing around while the thing was cooking. And looked up, everything was smoking and everything. We started hauling buckets of water or whatever from the pond, throw on the fire, put it out and everything. It didn't burn down, but we did get about a liter of white lightning. Not one of us dared to take a shot of that. It probably would have blinded us right on the spot.
Did your parents ever know about this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Parents seem to know things from other parents,
Sure.
so it leaked. But anyway, we had fun, but we probably could have, lit the whole town on fire.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Jerry, do you have any good things that happened or pranks?
I was usually home doing algebra.
Yeah, listen up, Marilyn. True serum died.
Now, we had a gang on 4th Street. We had David Marley, my sister and I, Kaylin Brighton, Craig, Sally would come over from 5th Street, Jill and Jan, so we'd have this huge gang in play. And Sally and I fell in love with Man from U.N.C.L.E. show. Oh. So we'd run around the neighborhood using our shoes as walkie-talkies and as our pens as secret dart guns. And we'd ride our bikes, except I couldn't ride a bike. And we'd be between Lyle's house and the house across the street towards my house. And I always had to be the stoplight while everybody else was riding their bikes back and forth. So in 5th grade, I decided I had enough of this. So I took my sister's bike in our backyard and I rode that till I destroyed it, learning how to ride a bike. So I didn't have to be the stoplight anymore for the gang. That was good.
I've got a story about Sherman and Donnie Hall.
Okay,
This
let's
is one of-
hear
This
it.
is one of the funniest pranks. Johnny King had hired them to do something, and they weren't happy with how much Johnny paid them. He was kind of cheapskate, paying kids stuff. I got a shirt on here actually, so still love him. But anyway, Donnie and Sherman one day went down at the river when it flooded and were gigging cars. And John had this old brown truck. You guys remember it, like it was a Studebaker or something, some old brown truck he had. So they took a couple of those dead fish and they put it behind the seat of the truck. And John, for a week, rode around, couldn't figure out where the smell was coming from. I don't think he ever did find out, but Donnie and Sherman, that was one of the best things anybody ever did. It was harmless, really.
Yeah.
But they got Uncle John back. They got him back good.
Well, Michael, Sherman, Jerry, Bill, I don't know who all. I don't remember really any girls doing this except for me. Somehow, one of us learned about Halloween pranks and corning people. Basically using corn and corning people. So Bill and Jerry had a nice hill ledge at their house, and we would corn Edith.
Oh my.
And she would come out looking, and we were over on the side of the hill. And my mom had gotten me some really nice wool shorts because the girls in high school had them, and I wanted to wear them to the Halloween carnival. Well, for some reason I wanted to go out and impress these guys and also corn and roll on the ground hiding from Edith. And I had those on one night, and I laughed so hard I wet my pants. Those wool shorts, and I thought they were so great. But she would come out, and then she just kind of played it up with us. And I can't remember if we did any toilet paper with her, but we did the corn, and I don't know. I remember my mom telling me about corning people, or my dad, but I don't think they thought they were going to go after or eat it. But she was the one that was the most responsive, and so we really
along
liked
the
it.
lines of that story, one of those stories was town cop, I think his name was Romy.
Yeah.
Well, we might be running away from Edith's house, and Romy be coming walking around the corner the other way, and there was a clothesline about this high. I about decapitated myself.
It was fun, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a blast.
Pitch dark.
Well, Carolyn first mentioned the Halloween parties, and all the parents and teachers and everybody would decorate the gym all around the square with all these little games and things for people to play. Well, then they'd sometimes put programs on, and I'll never forget the night John Burns, Homer David Smith, and my dad were in ballerina tutus dancing on the stage.
Wonder if somebody got a picture.
I'm going to ask you guys a couple more questions. The first one I want to ask you is we talked a little bit about Bob Moore's store and how important it was to all of us. And that was when Uncle John begged me to open up a candy store in Gosport because he said, oh, it'll be wonderful. And it made a lot of money. But, so I did that, and I wanted to honor Bob Moore's. What was your favorite thing in Bob Moore's store, and what was your favorite candy bar in Bob Moore's store?
Battle Milk, which somebody mentioned before, was one of my favorites. And when I babysat for Brad King every Saturday, his mother would give me lunch money to take him down to the restaurant to have a cheeseburger, and then I was to take him to Bob Moore's to pick out candy. And so he would pick out whatever candy he wanted, and we'd go back to his house to play. So we went in Bob's a lot. But my favorite place was my dad's drugstore.
Oh, sure. Mike, what about you at Bob Moore's?
Bottled milk, and then just any of the like chocolate stars or
Yeah, the chocolate
chocolate
stars
covered
were-
peanuts, all that stuff you can buy with any candy. All of them were good.
Kim?
Knee-high grape, where it was just so cold, it was just dripping cold, and the marshmallow ice cream cones.
Oh,
I love the marshmallow ice cream cones.
Craig?
I'm really trying to remember. We were poor.
Well, my mouth's watering thinking of fresh Boston baked beans.
There you
Oh,
go.
yes, they were great.
I have some for your
And my-
family at my house. I'm gonna have to go get it for tomorrow to give to you guys because I got
And
some.
unfortunately, my Hunsaker cousins moved out of town, but every time they came to town, that's
Lure Bob Moore's getting Boston Big Meat.
Yeah.
Did he have that taffy and the peel off big
Oh, yeah.
slice?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's about all I can remember.
I do have one
Wax
story about
figures.
Bob Moore's. When I was little, the toys and things were in the back corner of the store. And I went back there and they had jacks and a ball, and I loved that. And I saw it and everything, and I didn't have any money, and so I took it. And I took it home, and I was out on the sidewalk, and I was playing with the jacks and everything, and Mom came out. She said, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "Oh, Carla next door," which I was blaming poor Carla, Bob Dayhuff's daughter, Carla. "Oh, I just got it and borrowed it." She said, "No." I said, "Where'd you get that?" And I finally confessed that I had got it, and she made me go back down there and tell them that I'd stolen it, and that, and she said, "Make her work for it," or whatever. And I had to sweep, like, just the very front. It was like, I was like dying because I had stolen it, but I never stole anything again. But that's my Bob Moore story. Let's see. Okay, and the last question I want to ask you guys is, you lived through Lazy Days, and Lazy Days started in '68. So what's your favorite memory of Lazy Days, or your first impressions of Lazy Days when we started? And I'll start with Jerry, and we'll work this way back down.
The Scout Bean Dinner. And, Scout Bean
Scout
Dinner.
Bean.
Oh, Scout Bean. Yeah.
Mr. Streetmore.
Yeah, and Fuzzy and Bud, they were neighbors, and so they were always coming by our house, and they had to keep it going all night.
Yeah.
It was great. And still,
Need to bring it back.
yeah, I miss it.
That's the
Yeah, I
chicken dinner.
do. Craig, what about you?
Well, a lot of that, the chicken dinner for sure. But I remember vividly, it was just kind of starting. I mean, we were in the football program, just starting up, and I remember, coming back from practices or whatever, and Lazy Days was starting up. And it was just an atmosphere that was really cool as a team, and a lot of us were here and everything. But yeah, that's one of the very first, I think. Wasn't the first, but it was close to it. But I'll say, I remember, well, we had a pancake breakfast, and then we had at 11 o'clock, you had the bean dinner, then you had all the huge chicken dinner. By the time I got home, I was so bloated I couldn't eat it. But I loved it all.
It was worth it. Kim, what about you? What was your favorite Lazy Days?
Well, one thing I loved and I really appreciated was being able to be involved in it, and I loved doing the talent show and recruiting people and seeing a big crowd there. I love that, especially the Gong Show, when we did the Gong
Yes.
Show.
Yeah.
And with everybody, Mrs. Whitaker was the card girl, and she did such a good job, and then Thelma Applegate did it after her, so we had some great people. But the thing I remember the most, and I think it was the first year of Lazy Days, over, what street was that you lived on? Fourth, okay, right there by the drugstore, we had a twist contest, and it was a big deal. I was younger again. And Denise Jones got out there, and she did the twist and won.
Yeah.
And she was so good, and she was like one of my icons because she went with one of the stouter boys, and they were older. I knew them, they were good friends with my dad, their dad, and my aunt, and their mom, and everybody. But she won that twist contest, and she, as far as I was concerned, could twist better than Chubby Checker. And I loved it. I can still see her to this day doing the twist, and I always wanted her to come to Lazy Days and do the twist, and she got so
Do the
ill
twist again.
that she couldn't do it.
What was your prize?
I don't know what it was. I don't know if I think they just gave her like a trophy or something.
Okay.
But the lights were dim. The street lights weren't real bright, but she was there right under the street light. They had the contest of doing that twist, and I could see
I always
her.
thought Fourth Street was so spooky. And all the trees. And it was always
At
so
night,
spooky.
it can be dark.
Yeah.
Joellen, what about you?
Oh, I have lots of favorite memories, and most of them revolve around my dad. Was the bed race when my husband and I and my sister and her husband, we put Daddy on the bed, and the four of us ran him down the street, and everybody said, "That's the fastest your dad has And John King had a lovely thing he used to say about my dad, which is one of the reasons he's in this song,
Yeah.
was how slow he was. And Johnny King says you could go in to buy an ice cream at the drugstore, and it would be melting by the time Jim got the perfect scoop on an ice cream cone. And he always saved black cherry and an orange ice cream, not sherbet, from Johnson's Creamery in Bloomington for me, because it's my favorite. Hearing the Thank God I'm from Gosport song, but all the King acts during the talent shows were hysterical. Like, the Blues Brothers, King Tut. I mean, those are those are all glorious memories from every year. And I hope I can get a tape of them sometime.
Yeah.
And my boys even came as they were growing up here. And so and I always tell everybody two things. Going home to Gosport is like Scarlett O'Hara going home to Tara. And the other thing is, Gosport is the center of the universe. And when I told that to Jim Ann Faulkner, who, one of the twins, who did my hair in Indianapolis all the time until she moved to Florida, we would talk about stories where you'd go clear across the United States and you'd meet somebody from Gosport. And I told my husband, you have to know Gosport's the center of the universe. So everywhere we went, we would meet somebody from Gosport. So he began to believe it. So every time Jim Ann had a story, she'd call me, thank God Gosport's the center of the universe. Did you tell me another story? So you are all the center of the universe to me.
Michael, your favorite Lazy Days memories?
Probably was when Dad sang the first time, Thank God I'm from Gosport. I actually wrote the song and had promised him I would sing it with him. And at the last minute, I chickened out. We even went down to Rosalind Jones's house and practiced. And he sounded so good by himself, I thought, what the hell? I let him take over and do it. It's like Frank Sinatra. It's not a duo with him. He just does it himself, and he really did great. I've got to sing the verse about Jim Smith here since we did it. Okay, so Jim was the mailman. Okay, so here was the Jim Smith verse. Well, some people say that the mail's kind of slow. Well, I got a letter that was mailed a month ago. Jim's only quick when he really has to go. Thank God I'm from Gosport. Dad would always, after that, has to go, he'd go, yeah. Thank God I'm from Gosport. So that was the Jim. But also, the Blues Brothers acts and the acts that we did, people thought, man, they must have really practiced. Yeah. And we really didn't. We got together, we always tried to get together like one night before. We'd always go down to Bernice Dittamore's house and dress and get ready for it. And we would go through the act then, and we thought, oh, this isn't going to come. But somehow we always did it. I don't know how it all came about, but Dad and Johnny was a born showman. Johnny was a born showman. He was kind of the icon in it, and when we did the Blues Brothers without him, it was tough, but gosh, somehow that everybody picked it up and we did it again. Yeah, that was really
and we
cool.
got to give credit to Rosalind too.
Oh,
Her
yeah.
accompaniment, she was great.
Yeah,
She loved every minute of
the
it.
first gong show was great. I mean, we had people like Junior Cook come out. He just played the mandolin and sang. It was like, my God, it was like a country music star now. He was absolutely great. Rosemary Smith with the magic jump rope, jumping, and some of these acts were just Marshall Porter, the unknown comic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Vern Petrie played.
Vern Petrie playing the accordion. I mean, some of
And
that
that was
stuff
out recruiting people. We also had Everett Anderson. He got out and danced with me, and he was so good. And then Billy Pemberton doing the train whistles.
I remember Mike memorizing the Gosport phone book and reciting it. Yes.
I don't remember that.
Yes, he did.
Sometimes those numbers stay with you.
I remember when Jim and Rayma won the
Oldie
Wed game.
Yeah.
And they got a night at the Patriot Inn in Spencer. I don't know that they ever used it. They might have, but
Do you guys remember the Oldie Wed game? That funniest questioner, Dr. Steerley wanted to be the host, and we would go up to Gary and Judy Armstrong's house to work on the questions, and he was drinking a lot back. I mean, he was practicing. But the question we came up with, and when I tell you, we about peed our pants like Kimberly was talking about, was we were going to ask the question, your meal cost $49.64. How much of a tip would you leave? That was the question. It was Jim and Raymond. It was John and June Burns were in it, and Joe and June Whitaker were in it. But we knew what was going to happen because John Burns had more money than all of us and was so cheap. And he would only tip $2. If you had two people sitting there, that's what you got. And care if it was $100, meal, whatever. $1 for her, $1 for me. And so when we knew that, we knew he was going to say $2. And he hit June when we asked that question and did that, that laugh of his. And June goes, $2, and he goes, it was $2. And everybody got the biggest kick. That memory stays with me. All right. Thank you guys for being part of this. Questions?
This will sound silly to everybody here, but I'm from California. What is corning?
Oh.
You'll know
Where do you live? Where do you live?
Yeah, where do you live? Where do you live?
Yeah, corn that's
Shells.
shelled,
Yep.
and just shelled corn like the type you feed.
So it's
your
dried,
squirrel,
it's
but
not
shelled.
cooking, yeah.
And then you throw it on their window.
Oh, you're pelting.
It
Okay.
makes
It sounds
exciting.
like
It sounds
shotgun
like
ball.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Now with metal roofs, it sounds even better.
Yes, Teresa.
I got into a fight because of him on corning. He got accused of corning one night down at Texas. You remember that?
No, it was Johnny Jones.
Huh?
It was Johnny Jones.
Anyway,
Yeah.
throwing the corn on there. And
Says, oh, Mike,
it,
you're supposed to take the
didn't
top off
happen. It
first.
didn't happen.
Well, I got in trouble. Roger and I decided that we were going to go out and soap some windows, but we did it during the day. Every Saturday, Roger had me
What'd
come
you score
over.
on that essay?
Roger,
More trouble than just math.
he had us come. He had me come over every Saturday because his mom could cook because she taught, and that's the only time that she could really cook. And we would listen to Rodgers and Hammerstein records and dance and sing to them. And we took dancing lessons together in Martinsville. We decided, hey, let's go out and soap some windows. So we went out and soaped. Irene's windows or screens, and I don't know, somebody else's, maybe Brig, and they knew we did it. It was no big deal. And Viola got hers soaked, and she came out and let us have it good. And we did not soap her windows or screens.
Oh.
And she came at us like a wet chicken, and we got in big trouble. And we had to go over there and spray her screens, and we didn't even touch them. So I never did soap again.
I was just, when it's through, I will be putting this video on YouTube. And there, you had a title for tonight, something about,
Kimberly and I went back and forth. We're just going to say Gosport through the decades.
there we go. So that's what I'll, and I will then put a link on the Gosport site. So, and I apologize up front because sometimes I'll be laughing and going like that.
Anybody else with any questions you want to ask this illustrious panel?
Who everybody is that's here tonight.
Sure. Linda just wants to know who's all here. So, Homesicker family, stand on up and tell them who you are. Look at all of them.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Jerry.
All right. Good.
And Joyce is back behind them. And Joyce is the matriarch, right? Of the family. So thank you guys for coming. And I do have some of the Boston baked bean things for you. I promised Marilyn. Let's see. Bob and Diane. Bobby Dayham and Diane Dayham.
It's getting harder and harder
yeah.
for us to stand up.
Bobby, I got a question for you. How did Cooch get the name Cooch?
Yeah.
How did Cooch get his name, Marvin get the name Cooch?
I think I used to know, but I think I forgot. Hey, I'm just like that, Bobby. I'm just like that.
Yeah, I would have.
What was his CB handle?
Riverman.
Riverman.
And on Channel 23.
It's in the song.
Yeah, I think so.
I have
He's got a verse in the
on
song.
Roger.
Oh, and Roger
one,
Moore.
Roger Moore. at our house down there, we always had of course, we didn't have air conditioning for a long time, right, Keith? And on the north end of the house, next, facing Owens's there, we had this big fan in the window. Well, we would play down there in that side yard because Owens's were never there much. But anyway, Roger and I were out there, and he was, wanted to drink or something. I said, well, Roger, there's a hose right there. So just turned the hose on the north end of that house. Mom was preparing the living room for fortnightly. And so Roger's standing here with the hose, and it's shooting up. He's getting a drink out of it, and it sucked right into that fan. And that whole living room. Mom come out there, and she screamed like you wouldn't believe. And Roger got so scared he ran all the way home. And a little bit later, I heard the phone ring. Roger's on it. Marion, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what it was doing.
Fortnightly started the museum, and that was kind of how the museum got started. They were kind of the acting group, and we all that lived through it as members or as parents, our mothers were in it. We understand. We had to have the silver had to be cleaned and polished, and the house was spitty shine, and the best china was what came out and everything when they had Fortnightly. It's a wonderful group. It's still active. So
Because it was a cultural club.
it was a cultural club. Any more questions?
I've got some here. I put together a list of nicknames of Gosport throughout the years.
That's neat.
And I want to see if you guys know who. Well, Cooch, obviously. That's one of the all-time greatest nicknames in Gosport history. Brig, of course, has to be one of the top. His name was actually Estel Young, but everybody called him Brig Young from Brigham Young. His name was not actually Brig. Singin' Ben. Everybody know who that is?
Yes.
Benny Davis. Yeah. He drank a little bit. Speedball is one of the top nicknames for Howard Morgan, who was in Dad's class. Or behind all the head. Yeah, okay. Carp. The younger guys know that. Jim Gillespie. The Stouter boys gave that name because he swam across White River once. They gave him the nickname Carp.
Never knew how he got it.
Rab, isn't Rab a nickname?
Yeah.
Actually, tell why he had that name. That's Craig's grandfather.
Well, they said that he ran the football, when he played professional football.
Yeah. Like a rabbit.
Semi-pro, but he ran like a rabbit. So I think he took after him.
And there's two shorties. Can anybody name them?
Shorty Gates.
That's one. Shorty's the other guy from the nursing home that used to sweep the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Everybody remember him?
Yeah, Shorty.
Yeah. And Piney, of course. That's right. There's Moose, a couple of Mooses, I think.
Moose Collier.
And Moose Henry.
Moose Henry.
Moose Henry and Moose Scott. Moose Snyder, so maybe three. No Hope. Does anybody know who that is?
No.
Somebody singing Ben once told me Freddie Babs looked like Bob Hope, but he was No Hope. and he called him that. He called him that all the time. Yeah, Freddie. Spanky. John King, some of the kids call him John King Spanky, and I don't know why.
Right.
Bun. Yeah, and why? How did he get nicknamed Bun? Does anybody have any idea? I mean, or why? Tater. Tony Walters.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Was nicknamed
One of the
Tater.
Shelleys a tater too?
Little Joe. Whitaker. Little Joe.
Yeah.
Chig.
Snodgrass.
Now, how did he get that? What's that company?
Real
Anybody
name,
know?
Harold.
Harold.
Okay.
Jerry, you can answer.
Okay. Colonel Clink.
Ross
Trotman.
Trotman. I don't know. A lot of older people probably didn't know what kids called him that, Colonel Clink. Because he looked like Colonel Clink from Hogan's
The
Heroes.
movies.
And then there was a couple other colonels. There was Colonel Burt Wampler, who lived next to my grandma. And was there another colonel we talked about Dad earlier? I can't remember that. Okay, and there was Peanut. Brown. Then there was one guy in our class, Chico, we called him. Remember Steve Bryant?
Yes.
Yes, he was kind of a Mexican descent.
Yes.
He liked that name. That's what we always called him. And his brother, Mike, they called him Snake, I think.
Yes.
He was in my class.
Mike,
Yeah,
Snake.
right.
And Boo,
Burnus.
Ernest Dittemore
That's right.
was Boo.
I think Vicky.
And Beaker, anybody know that?
Yes.
Mike Klaus.
Yeah, it was one.
Mike Klaus. Beaker.
heard it
For
for
some
60
reason they
years.
call him that. I don't know why. Do you know why?
No,
I'll
I don't know.
have to ask him that when I see him.
That's right.
Hun.
Bradley.
Brad King. Yeah. Now these are names I didn't know if they were real names or nicknames. Heck Anderson.
Yeah.
Is that a
that's
real
his
name?
No,
Is Heck?
it was just given.
Wasn't
to
it
him.
Harold?
Yeah, I think
Harold.
it was. Harold.
So
Harold Anderson.
And,
he was called Heck always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a
20
janitor at
was his
school.
way, yeah.
Yeah. Bides Childers. I don't know if
Oh,
Bides is
yeah.
actually a real name or
I
is that a real name?
Was it?
I've never heard of that. Some of these
Yeah.
names are just names that are.
Okay.
How about Dutch Dunnigan?
Oh,
Dutch
Minor.
yeah.
Minor.
That's
Minor.
Minor.
So that must have been a nickname.
Yeah.
Romy Truesdell.
Jewel.
It was
Jewel,
Jewel.
yeah.
It was
Yes,
Jewel, but-
Jewel.
so Romy must have been a nickname. But
Romy.
anybody know? You, Bobby, know
Jewel.
why that? Romy? Why
Romy?
he had a nickname Romy?
Romy Truesdell?
Yeah, because his real name was Jewel.
I guess it
Because
was
he roamed around
Yeah.
Gosport.
I guess.
Rumor I heard he walked everywhere. He didn't have
Yeah.
a police
Oh,
car.
that was it.
So he'd roam to one end of town
Okay,
and
well,
roam to
that's-
the other end of town.
And Exie Holzman is a strange name. I've never heard any other woman named
I
Exie.
know.
No, but that's her name, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
That's
her
her
name.
name.
That's her really name, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then we had a neighbor, Relly Goss,
Yeah.
which I've never heard that name before.
Yeah.
That was his
Boogie
name.
on there?
What?
Boogie?
No, I don't.
No, I'll tell you what they
Boogie
called him,
Cutoff.
really hated it, was Rosebud.
Who's that?
They called him that
Really?
from the station, Rosebud.
Huh.
And if he hated it, you say that name, you're in trouble. I never did either, but I was told that, Rosebud.
And one of the strangest names in town ever, I think, was Narf Newby. It's
Yes.
Frank spelled backwards.
Yes, it is.
And I don't know if they did that on purpose or what.
Yeah, he changed it.
Was it Greek?
Yeah. Narf New Knarf.
Now, the one
This is back room.
nickname you don't have
Lots of
on
humor in
there
that.
is my dad's nickname that was given him by John and Dr. Steerley and a group of them, Mad Dog.
Mad Dog, yeah, you're right. Mad Dog, that's it. Mad Dog, you're right.
He's the farthest thing from Mad Dog.
Mad Dog, yeah.
I'm going to tell you a little story about Rome. I didn't know that my step-grandfather had sold my bicycle to him. Well, when they were tearing down the house over there where he used to live and everything, there was a bicycle there. And so this Mike was telling me about it. He said that, I think it was Lee Nichols, wanted some money for that, you know, the bicycle and everything. So that bike out there on the highway was my old bicycle. That's out there where it's at.
Oh, is that
But
right?
it's been painted
The
orange, it
white
was
or-
blue.
yeah.
And it was a real old one, you know, it was not like a Schwinn or anything like that. But I didn't know he had sold it, see. But anyway, yeah, that's where it's at. I just know that's it.
Well, thank you guys all for coming. Get your copies of Thank God from Gosport. If there's not enough, we have more. We'll have Joe sign some more. Do your autograph if you can, and just, do that. And come back and see us anytime you come at the museum. We'd love to have you over on Friday.